Hello, my name is Katie Creed. I am with CT and Associates through Cetera Investors. Thank you for listening to our First Topic Tuesday. Our First Topic Tuesday, we're going to be going over student loans. I've been working with many clients for many years, and oftentimes a huge stressor for individuals is their student loan debt. I work a lot, within the education space and the nonprofit space. So there's actually two different programs that allow for forgiveness, and we'll talk about that in another video. But today I want to start first with just the basics of student loan debt and how it works, really. So student loan debt within the United States is you typically have two different options, federal or private. Now, how you even get student loan debt, though, or you even apply to receive some assistance, is usually utilizing the FAFSA or the CSS profile. Now, depending upon which school you go to, or you're wanting to go to, or your kids are wanting to go to, they will utilize either one or maybe both of those two application processes. Now, the FAFSA is definitely the more common one that's out there. The CSS profile is usually for what I call the more hoity-toity schools. So those are usually for the more privatized universities. So it's not as widely spread. But what both of those two applications do is they allow whoever is the individual who is managing the majority of the bills, right? So if a child is a dependent for their parents or for their guardians, then the guardians or the parents would be filling that application out, or it would be their information that they are submitting. Now, if it is an adult or a child who is financially responsible for at least 50% of their own bills, then they would be the one that would be filling out the form. So it'll just depend. But what that FAFSA or that CSS profile application is looking at primarily is how much your income is, and then how much assets you have. Now, what kind of assets they will be looking at will be dependent upon the FAFSA or the CSS profile. So if you have questions, feel free, just use the link for our website and we can set up a consultation. But when they're looking at income, it's really important that we know as advisors and individuals filling out that form, the income that they're going to be looking at is 2 years prior from the year that you're planning on attending the college, university, trade school, whatever it may be. For example, if somebody is wanting to start their education in the fall of 2020, they would be looking at 2018 taxes. They'd be going 2 years back. And then also looking at when do we start to apply for these things? Well, the FAFSA opens up October 1st, the year before they once again go to school. So if somebody wants to start school fall 2020, they would have been able to open up the application October 1st, 2019. So it's good to know what the timelines are for certain things, because the earlier we can apply, the higher the probability that you can receive the more beneficial aspects when going through the FAFSA. So timing can be important. Then when we look at the CSS profile, they will just look at more assets, but it's very similar in nature, okay? Now, the next thing that people usually like to know is, okay, Katie, well, I filled out this application. I now know how much student loans I can potentially get because they shot me over an email or they sent me a form. What's this difference between federal and private loans? Great question. So the big difference is who's giving you the money, right? Is it a private institution, or is it a private arrangement, or is it through the federal government? How the federal government ones work is they have more options available to them. We'll be talking about that in a little, but when I say more options, I mean more options on payment plans. You have things like deferment. There's also different kinds of loan forgiveness applications that are potentially available to you. So they have some more flexibilities in nature. whereas the private ones are a little bit more rigid. So we don't have those luxuries. But when you look at the federal ones, because they are the more popular ones, when you look at the federal option, they usually have something called subsidized and unsubsidized. The big difference between those is the subsidized loans, those are the ones that wait to start building up interest that you pay until you are done with schooling. All right, where the unsubsidized loans, the interest starts building immediately. So once you receive that loan, that's when the interest on your account starts to build. Now, the positive thing about student loans is that they're based off of a simple interest concept, meaning when your interest is building, it's building based off that principal dollar amount. So when you get a student loan, that's the amount that you first see. So let's say somebody got a student loan for $5,000. That $5,000 is what the interest is building on. Versus there are some compounding interest loans out there in the world where those are structured where interest builds on not only the principal, but the principal and the interest that has grown over time. So it starts to snowball quite quickly. The nice thing about student loans is they're more on the simple interest track. But what I do like to speak on is for those student loans, if you are looking to potentially consolidate or refinance them, that could change a little bit. So when individuals look to consolidate their student loans, this is strictly on the federal side, all right? Refinancing is a different word. Consolidating your federal loans is one, through the Department of Education. Two, what it's doing is basically saying, let's say you have 8 different individual federal loans. It will combine it into one. Then what it's doing is also giving you the opportunity to either get on a better payment plan, maybe do one of those loan forgiveness options. But what it's not doing is lowering your interest rate that's associated with that account. But when you consolidate, you're taking not only your old principal with you, you're also taking whatever interest has built up over time. And then that's going to essentially be your new principal. So your old principal and your old interest get put into the new principal, basically, of your new consolidated federal loan. Okay, now refinancing is a little bit different in nature, where we're looking at the privatized side. So what could happen is maybe we have 4 federal loans and 4 private loans, and we combine them all into one private loan. It's always going to go into the private sector. Or you could have 8 private loans, and then it's going to combine into one private loan. The goal of refinancing is really getting yourself to hopefully get a lower interest rate. You don't want to refinance if you cannot get a lower interest rate. Usually, you can never say never, but that's what we're looking for there. We do want to get a lower interest rate, and we do want to try to get a smaller payment, right? Because that interest rate is going to be smaller, hopefully. So that's the big difference between consolidating and refinancing. Now, in another video, I'll go over the different public service loan forgiveness application and the teacher loan forgiveness application, but I really wanted to cover the basics. And with any kind of loan, whether it's car, whether it's vehicle, whether it's student loans, the 2 main aspects are principal plus interest. So we just want to be mindful when we apply for these loans, regardless of what they are, you're not going to just be paying what the original principal was. This interest is going to accumulate over time, and it'll accumulate a bit quicker probably than you anticipate. So it's so important that we have a plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to pay this down? And that's going to be so dependent on each individual person's scenario. It's also going to be dependent upon what life throws at us. So we need to know what kind of flexibilities that we have. So that's what Abbey and I do for our clients. We set in place a plan of how we're going to get this thing done. And when life throws you a curveball, that's what we manage. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to go to the website, but also I'd love to know what kind of content you guys would like to learn about. So even over time, if certain things pop into your brain and you're like, Katie, I think this would be a really good video, please shoot me an email, whatever you need. But we would love to hear from you. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening to our First Topic Tuesday. Bye-bye.